Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this December 29, 2014 edition of Nightcast. Our opening story for tonight, we go to the father of the pilot missing AirAsia plane. He's been speaking about the possibility that his son may not come back alive.
I want my son to come back alive and well. But if that's not meant to be, if God doesn't want that, it's in the hands of fate. My son, he's not alone on the plane. If this is God's will, then so be it.
The father, friends, Suwarto, saw his son Irianto last week at the funeral of another of his sons who died of diabetes. The father told the BBC that, as you heard, whatever happened, it was the hands of fate. And as he explained, it was according to God's will, is the way the father felt about it. Further on this story, the search zone for the missing plane is being expanded. Let's go to this opening video from a BBC correspondent on board the flight who says search teams saw oil slicks in the waters.
It's another sea search for another Asian airliner that simply dropped off the radar. But it's still far too early to draw any comparisons between this latest disappearance and the Malaysian plane that vanished last March. So what might have gone wrong with Flight 8501? Well, there are some clues. We know the pilot asked to climb and turn to avoid bad weather. Other pilots tell me that is normal behaviour for this part of the world, which can be very stormy. And look at this real footage. The average plane actually gets hit by lightning at least once a year. Even the most violent storms, though, shouldn't bring it down, although it can happen, especially if the crew don't react well to a problem. The Airbus A320 is one of the safest aircraft in the skies. There are 6,000 flying around with 300 operators. Now, the AirAsia aircraft wasn't old, and the airline itself has a very good safety record. And as for terrorism, well, so far there is nothing to indicate the flight was targeted by hijackers or a terrorist group. Whatever happened, the lack of a mayday call shows it happened very quickly. Look at this sped-up radar picture. The missing plane is in red. Plenty of aircraft were close by at the time. They would all have an ear open for distress calls. No one heard anything.
The plane is tracked by radar in that part of the world. They have full radar coverage. They have full radio coverage, VHF radio coverage. So if the aircraft is no longer on radar, then the speculation is, and it's only speculation, is that it's no longer flying.
The key to solving this mystery is the search, but they're looking in a relatively small area that can be quickly covered by aircraft. Flying has been enjoying a golden era for safety, but this latest disappearance, plus the loss of 2 Malaysian Airlines aircraft earlier in the year, is casting a shadow over that record. Richard Westcott, BBC News.
Friends, this is only the second day into this missing airline. As I mentioned, they've seen an oil slick that some think that may indicate the area where it may be found sometime after first light tomorrow. At the scene, Cleve Myrie, BBC News Surabaya, Indonesia, says Indonesia officials are wearing their hearts on their sleeves. President Joko Widodo shot down suggestions that debris and oil from the fuel tanks may have been discovered by saying, quote, "We have to tell it like it is. So far, our efforts haven't found clarity about this plane's position. While some relatives will keep the fire of hope burning, he went on to say, there is the developing devastating realization for others that their loved ones will not be found alive. And I shouldn't have credited that to the president. That was part of the BBC news story. What the president did say was, we have to tell it like it is. So far, our efforts haven't found clarity about the plane's position. And then going back to the news story, friends, it's an agony that people here are beginning to get used to. It's an agony that people are beginning to get used to as time drags on and optimism and hope ebb away. On board the plane were 137 adult passengers, 17 children, 1 infant, along with 2 pilots and 5 crew. Most were Indonesian, but the passengers included 1 UK national, a Malaysian, a Singaporean, and 3 South Koreans. Pilot Captain Irianto, whose father you just heard speak a few moments ago, his son, Pilot Irianto, had more than 20,500 flight hours, almost 7,000 of them with AirAsia. The co-pilot was French national Rimni Emmanuel Plazel. And we do have more video, friends. I believe this just is raw video, no caption. Richard Westcott looks at what might have gone wrong. 30 ships and planes resumed the search, with 4 more search areas added to existing 7 patrols. The multinational operation led by Indonesia has been joined by Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, with other offers for help from South Korea, China, and France. The U.S. destroyer USS Sampson is on the way to the zone. Bambang Solistio, the head of Indonesia's search and rescue agency, told the Associated Press that military helicopters had been dispatched to scour land over Borneo Island. Until now, we have not yet found any signal or indication of the plane's whereabouts, he said. Earlier today, he said he suspected the aircraft was at the bottom of the sea, but there is so far no evidence of this. But that's what he suspects. The caption with this photograph that's part of this story, friends, reads, "Family and friends of those on board the planes are gathered and awaiting news at Surabaya Airport." The Indonesian Air Force said the search was seeking to establish whether an oil patch spotted off Belitung Island, a busy shipping lane, was aviation fuel or from a ship. The plane had left Surabaya in eastern Java at 5:35 a.m. on Sunday morning, local time there. That's 22:35 Greenwich Mean Time, Saturday, and had been due to arrive in Singapore at 8:30. The AirNav safety director said Captain Irianto, age 53, requested permission to bank left at 6:12 to avoid a storm. The request was immediately granted, and the plane changed course. According to state navigation operator AirNav Indonesia, the pilot then asked to take the plane from 32,000 feet, 9,800 meters, to 38,000 feet, but did not explain why he wanted to do so. Indonesian air traffic control staff told the pilot he could take the plane to 34,000 feet, but no higher, because another AirAsia airliner was flying at 38,000 feet. It took us around 2 to 3 minutes to communicate with Singapore, Mr. Darjano said. But when we informed the pilot of the approval at 6:14, we received no reply. The plane was officially declared missing at 7:55 a.m. It is unclear what happened next, but one report suggests the plane may have tried to climb through the storm. Former pilots say a climb could have led to reduced stability and possibly a fatal stall as crosswinds and downdrafts battered the plane. The AirAsia plane was delivered in 2006, has flown 13,600 times, completing 23,000 hours, and underwent its latest maintenance in November. AirAsia previously had no fatal accidents involving its aircraft. Friends, another story that, these stories would relate to the fourth seal in the sense of, or at least the timing of the fourth seal, in the sense that Jesus Christ described that in addition to loimos, which has been determined to be the primary thing of the fourth seal of the book of Revelation, which Jesus Christ described in plain language in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, using the term loimos, meaning disease epidemics, pestilence, the plagues of Egypt. But for that same time period as the fourth seal to happen between the third seal and the fifth seal, Jesus Christ said there would be seismus and increasing seismus. And when you see more and more seismus, then know that summer is nigh. And in the context of what Christ was saying, he then explains the fifth seal. Know that the fifth seal, which is the next thing to happen, the next major event to happen in prophecy, the fifth seal not having happened yet, except in a tiny little way in type, with Fox's Book of Martyrs talking about a time of great martyrdom, but small fry compared to what's coming, to the great martyrdom that's coming during the fifth seal, during the Great Tribulation, the time of World War III, the time of a newly crowned emperor over the Holy Roman Empire, which the Bible calls a beast. It'll be the revived beast power, the revived Holy Roman Empire, with the seventh and final head restoring and leading the Holy Roman Empire, leading it, or I really should say having control, having the power. But the control over the power and the real lead over it will be that woman that the Bible uses in symbol, the woman meaning a church, and in this case a false church, a church that has global power, universal influence and power around the world as a religion, which is described in Revelation 12, verse 9, as having its head to be Satan the devil. Let's read that verse real quickly before we go on to this next story that relates to the seismus part of the fourth seal that I'm speaking of. Seismus being defined in a Greek-English lexicon as seismic activity, commotions in the air such as gale force winds of all kinds, typhoons, tornadoes, hurricanes, etc., and commotions on the ground, such as the example given in the Greek-English lexicon, as earthquakes. Of course, that also includes volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, wildfires, floods, any kind of commotions on the ground. All of those are part of the activity Christ described in a word as seismus. The Greek covers all that with one word, real succinctly. But in Revelation 12, in verse 9, God tells us the great dragon, was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, making very clear who we're talking about by that great dragon, that the old serpent. It's, as explained here, the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. And how does he do it, friend? He does it through organizations. He has put his, shall we use the word blessing for the devil doing something? He's put his influence, he's given power to these people to build up false religions that deceive the whole world. Now, if we wanted to put emphasis on it, we'd say, well, it deceives a few people, one here and one there. No. The wording in the Bible says it deceives the whole world. He, Satan the devil, and he does it through his human instruments and organizations, such as the one set up in Rome, Italy. And while we're calling a spade, let's just spit it on out there, Stephen. The Vatican and its leaders, including the Pope. Now, as to whether the current Pope will be the final Pope, who will be symbolically the woman who rides the beast when its seventh head is crowned by the 10 horns on its head, who give their power to the head of this beast, those 10 horns being 10 kings who give their power to this one, who is the overall beast, for, as the Bible puts it, an hour, meaning, meaning a short time in the idiomatic way it's used. And again, that'll be the time of Jacob's trouble. That's the fifth seal coming alive. It's the time of the revived Holy Roman Empire with that seventh and final king as its head, given the power by those 10 kings who give the power to that one for an hour, for a short time. And all that's just ahead of us in the fifth seal as these 4 seals that preceded. I don't have my chart I can bring up tonight again. We're still working on our camera shots as we work on a lot of other things on the property where the studio is to get things back to base 1. And we'll not only get back to base 1, but we'll be actually a little ahead because things will be improved. We'll be operating with better quality equipment, more memory, more power supply sources that run it, and so on. But this fourth seal, part of it, or at least the timing of it, relates to what Christ described as seismus. He also used another term for this time period during the fourth seal of tereke, meaning disturbances, troubled waters, both literally and figuratively, in the figurative sense meaning mobs and seditions, but related to the story we just played and the next story, this fourth seal. I'm going to hang it on the fourth seal because Christ said it would happen between the third and the fifth seal. Seismus, seismic activity, commotions in the air, commotions on the ground, and the commotions in the air in this next story relates to lightning. And it says, Brazil, the caption with the photograph for the story, friends, reads, not the caption, but the headline for the story reads, Brazil lightning strike kills 4 people on beach. And the caption for this photograph reads, the storm tore down trees and power lines across Sao Paulo state. And then here's the story that goes with this. 4 people in Brazil have been killed by a lightning strike on a beach crowded with holidaymakers, according to media reports. 4 others were taken to hospital. 2 of them are said to be in a serious condition. The incident occurred during a sudden storm at Praia Grande on the coast of southeastern Sao Paulo State. The victims were sheltering from heavy rain in a beachside kiosk when they were struck. They were all from the same family and included a pregnant woman, according to news site G1 in Portuguese. The storm tore down trees and power lines, as we read in the caption that opened with this story. And we have a map showing you exactly where Sao Paulo and the Praia Grande beach area in Sao Paulo is located. You can see that here. All right, friends, and next we'll go over to Italy. And another story related to stormy, weathery conditions that involves what you've been hearing about the ferry fire. The passengers were rescued and led to safety. All remaining passengers have been rescued from an Italian ferry which caught fire off the Greek island of Corfu, officials have said. 8 people died in the incident. 1 man is known to have died trying to escape the ship. And friends, let me pause right there. The mention of the deaths in this story, the deaths in the lightning strike, and in other stories we've reported here, when we tie that to the 4th seal, it really relates, especially since to this characteristic that's described in Revelation, that 4th seal is depicted by a pale horse upon which the rider of that horse is named Death. The name of the rider is Death. And the further description of this horse and its rider says that alongside them, on the heels of this horse and its rider named Death, rides along Hades, hell, the grave. So Death with hell, Hades, hell, the grave, riding alongside it. It's a deadly horse. And one of its characteristics, as Christ described it during that time period for the 4th seal, he said it would have characteristics of seismic activity, commotions in the air, commotions on the ground, from which people die. Now, 1 man is known to have died trying to escape the ship, and 7 bodies have been recovered from the sea. And I believe somewhere we have video on this. James Reynolds did a report, but we read the summary of his report to you, so all I have is a photograph. I actually don't have video, so James just gave us photographs and a little summary of what's happening there. Now, in Egypt, friends, for our last story for tonight, there are hopes for the jailed Al Jazeera staff in Egypt. It's been a year since the arrest in Egypt of 3 Al Jazeera journalists, Peter Grest, Mohammed Farni, and Bayer Mohammed. And I should say Mohammed Fahmy and Bayer Mohammed, yes. They were charged with broadcasting false news and aiding a terrorist organization. Now, friends, you know, if everyone who actually did broadcast false news were arrested in the country or area or region where they are broadcasting from, would it not be true that we'd probably have hundreds and thousands of reporters in jail? You know, my fellow colleague reporters, I'm sorry to say that, but sometimes you don't realize what you're reporting is actually based on a falsehood here and there. But that's one thing. The only way you understand that is you got to understand this Bible, and you got to understand who this Bible's talking about when it talks about certain people, modern-day people today, that relate back to descriptions God gives in His Word as to who they are, and even in Genesis 49 telling where they will be in the last days. Now, in Egypt, the families of 2 of these Al Jazeera journalists who were imprisoned, and you know, many believe they were imprisoned falsely. 2 of the families of 2 of the men, the families of Peter Gresti and Mohammed Fahmy, say they are optimistic that an appeals court will order the group's release. We do have Let's see, do we have a video report on this? Well, no, we don't. Okay, maybe we'll have some video on that by tomorrow night, because I do understand that BBC reporter Sally Nabil is working on this, and I think we can, this is not the end of the story. BBC will be following the appeal, and will be keeping you apprised of how that goes as it goes. And friends, that's it for our report tonight. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back again tomorrow night, and as we pull things together a little tighter, we may extend our program again as we did and cover a little bit more. But I'll give you the most important things each evening while we're still working to revamp and revise things here. But thanks for joining me during this time, and thanks for joining me tonight, this Monday night. Again, as I said, God willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll be back again tomorrow night, Tuesday night, with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. So I'll say until next time, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. So long, friends. Good night until next time.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.